Hi, this is Jon Reed of Diginomica. I have my usual suspects for a collaborative podcast with ASUG Talks, which if you haven't checked it out, they are putting out podcasts at a frenetic rate over at ASUG. Geoff Scott, how you doing?
It's always quantity over quality, right, John? Is that what you typically say?
That's where we're headed. I'm a little worried about that. Josh, how we doing?
Let's be honest. We've actually done a good job, the three of us. Let's talk this up.
Okay.
We've done some great podcasts together.
Yes, we have.
Yes.
Okay.
So let's be positive.
And today's it seems we're taking any opportunity possible to put each other under the bus. So here we go. It's something, it's always you blame me for the microphone, and then started to blame you for something. So we're on a roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, Geoff has been working hard today. It's been a long day.
Jeff coming from back-to-back. He's from back-to-back sessions right now, so he's struggling a little. Now, keep in mind, this banter doesn't really work very well for the listeners 2 weeks from now, so let's chill on that a little bit. But anyway, so what's going on
for us right now, John?
Can I just set the stage for a sec? I'm running this podcast. Okay, so here's what's going on. We're at the end of a busy day one at Sapphire/ASUG annual conference, but we've all benefited from pre-conference activities of various kinds, but we also have the day one keynote to assess. We have a live studio audience. Hello, audience. Start thinking about what you might want to say. Hi. Wow. Start thinking about what you might want
John,
to
you
say.
have some groupies.
No, that's you. Because we're going to do an Ask Me Anything thing. You guys are going to be able to kind of frame the direction that we take. And then towards the end, we want to talk a little bit about business case and how to build a SAP business case, because we're fresh off of a session on that. We want to get your thoughts as well, Jeff. So anyhow, let's talk a little bit about the keynote, because we just had a 2-hour debut keynote this morning. Geoff Scott, speak for the customer, the voice of the customer. Reactions, please.
It was, in my opinion, one of the more heavier product-based keynotes we've had in quite some time. I think a lot of ground was covered. It was wonderful to see a cohesion across the executive team that, candidly, I haven't seen in a while. So a really nice handoff between Christian Klein, Mohammed, Philip Herzig was up on stage as well. I might be missing Sebastian Steinhauser was up, and it was nice to see a nice progression for the 2 hours of a keynote, which sometimes sounds and can be incredibly long. I actually felt went by at a pretty rapid pace. I think there was a lot of things that SAP talked about and they said, and I think that it was, by and large, really good. What I took away, the one blurb is SaaS, Suite as a Service. I thought was a very interesting way for them to think about it as they talk about Suite first and AI first.
Well, I would agree. It was interesting because you saw it as product heavy, and in the way it was, but it was done with a lightness and a sort of an interest on my end to hear the story they were telling, and they were telling really good stories about.
It was a good pace,
yeah. And I think they start out with this. There are 4 persona. It was a sort of a 4 persona kind of walkthrough of what you're going to get with this Suite as a Service. It was very well done, very credibly done. I think it moved. Yeah, the pacing was good. I think the storyline was excellent. I think SAP was making a strong case for the fact that there is actually stuff you can do with SAP today that works, that delivers value, that addresses the important problems in facing businesses, which are largely about the chaotic nature of the global economy today. And it was compelling. I thought what I saw was one of the better keynotes I've seen in a while.
So, John, I want to say for a moment that we typically have been more critical of SAP keynotes. So for the listener who's listening today and saying, well, that sounds like, they're really painting a great picture. Is that really what happened? I do want to provide that counterbalance that we have been critical in years past. So this is actually a pretty interesting departure, Josh, right?
Yes.
Well, I've got some criticism, so I'm going to balance that out.
Okay. You and I are the good guys. Yeah. Here comes John.
Yeah, I'm the keynote grouch here. Look, I thought this was the best keynote that SAP's had in a long time at Sapphire, but at the same time, last year's keynote was a borderline disaster. So that's damning with faint praise to some extent. But the thing I really liked about today was first of all, those customer interviews were really good. I've been to a lot of keynotes lately where the customer interviews were like handshakes and smiles and you're out of here. The customer interviews, they really framed the challenges they were facing and they spent some time exploring
They
that.
put it honestly, yes. It was credible.
And I thought that was really good. And I thought they had a pretty good balance of themes. I have some questions around best of suite because I think sometimes they really miss out on that picture of more of a that SAP needs to interact with a lot of other systems. And I think we need a little more of that messaging. But my biggest frustration was actually that I thought the presentation of the AI agent stuff around, there was this implication of like when they talked about reason and action, there was this implication of an autonomous enterprise right around the corner. And in fact, like that's not how SAP really thinks about it. Like in the press conference afterwards, they answered a bunch of questions about AI that were much more nuanced in terms of making sure that humans are in crucial positions to supervise the output. And it was a much more, I thought, thoughtful discussion than I got out of the keynote. So I think SAP missed an opportunity there to show that they've really put some thought into how to design AI that's trustworthy and ethical and isn't just about like, oh, this AI can reason, which by the way is a heavily debated concept. There's academic papers that argue that there is no reasoning going on in AI. So when you start throwing around buzzwords like that, I think you run some risks. But overall, I got to give SAP a lot of credit for a strong start. But it is just one keynote and a lot of important stuff is coming, I think, in tomorrow's keynote with Thomas Sauersig. So we got to kind of wait a little bit and see what else SAP has to say. So
I tend to share some of your skepticism about AI in an enterprise context. So I see a tremendous amount, and I know from an enterprise perspective, Jon will eventually get there. I think it is coming. I don't think it's coming at the speed and velocity that SAP might like it to come. So I do appreciate them continuing to push the boundaries of what we as customers think possible. Because if they push us to a certain outer limit, we'll ultimately continue to progress forward. I just think that the whole conversation around agent AI has a long way to go before.
But let me just stop you for a sec, though, because it's not that hard to say, look, these processes are built in such a way that they can be as autonomous as you want when you're ready. But in the meantime, you're going to have control. It's not that hard to insert that into a keynote. And I just didn't hear enough of that. And so that, that's my criticism of the keynote. So there you go.
This is critical.
Oh, and can I add one more?
No.
Which is I didn't need to hear from Ernst & Young today. So I've got nothing against Ernst & Young. I know they do a lot of great projects. But what I really want in place of Ernst & Young on stage is a bunch of upstart partners that customers have never heard of that will blow your mind with out-of-the-box solutions. Josh, we could go into a laundry list of partners like that right now. And you guys have seen them too, because I know you featured some of them in your exec exchange yesterday. So I would like to give more visibility to those types of firms because I'm pretty sure customers know what EY is all about at this point.
He is on a roll, isn't he? There's some applause in the audience. Okay.
No, and I think and this is one of the issues. I'm going to riff on the partner thing because it's a really important problem that I just want to highlight that we hear, the undercurrent of not just this keynote, but a lot of SAP's go-to-market strategy around not just anything relating to agentic AI, but the whole BTP story, the whole tool chain story is that more and more SAP is not just needs, but is utterly dependent on a rich and robust partner ecosystem that's going to take these technologies and really create a million last mile solutions that SAP can't and won't and shouldn't be creating. And what is tragic about this, and we talked to one of the folks who's in charge of the partner, the certification problem or issue is that SAP wants to certify partners. We talked about that yesterday in the analyst session, and particularly around the RISE methodology and getting this stuff correct. And the boast was that, there's now 14 partners certified. I raised my hand and said, well, are these partners, the usual suspects, or are you going to open this up to make it easier for the smaller, nimble boutique partners that Jon loves and I love too, to make it easier for them to get involved? And the answer was no. And this is a shame. This is an unfortunate problem. We saw that, and again, EY has such an immense power. They have 4 times the number of employees as SAP. I mean, they're huge. I would love to see a little more keynote love for some of these other ones too.
So
I agree.
we had a conversation yesterday about certifications from an ASUG perspective with some of the leaders from SAP, and what I would like to see from certification. I'm not going to address your theme on EY, but I am going to say that I would like the customers to have better visibility of what the certifications are and be able to ask very specific questions of their SIs if those certifications are present. Because I don't think there's good customer knowledge and awareness of what those should be. And so if we're doing a project around, say, manufacturing, or we're doing a project around supply chain, or we're doing a project around core financials, what type of certification should I be asking that my SIs have? Because then I need to go look for that. And I don't think there's a lot of clarity there. I think there's work to be done.
And just to be clear around the EY thing, if it had been PwC or Accenture, I'd be saying the exact same stuff. I'm not trying to make any, or Deloitte even. I'm not making any categorical judgments here on EY.
Even Deloitte.
So, even Deloitte. I mean, come on. All right.
By the way, I just want to respond to what you just said. I mean, we were told that moving forward, and I'm not sure when the trigger gets pulled on this, in order for you to be a partner working with the RISE methodology, you must be certified. SAP won't let you do that work without the certification. So I think you're gonna get to the point where it won't be a matter of what.
But again, to your point, I would like the customer base to understand what those certifications are, so they know what specifically to ask for. I'm not debating, and I think that everyone should be certified, and that to me is important. But I'd like there to be better clarity to the customers about what that all is. I'm not going to. I might be belaboring the point.
No, and I agree, 100%.
I want to say something nice about the keynote, though, which is that I've been giving SAP a bit of a hard time around this time to value concept, because when we look at this business case issue and look at how technical leaders are trying to justify these migrations, one of the big issues now is I got to be able to feed my executive team and my business users wins all the time. I can't just be like, oh, in 2 years, we're going to have a really agile architecture and a great real-time foundation. Like, you got to be able to give people stuff right away. Well, quick wins came up in pretty much every customer interview. The only thing I was disappointed in is that when NBC said it, there wasn't a follow-up question. So I don't know what the quick wins were.
Yeah, they said, we have got some really quick wins. I was on with John during the live.
I was like,
yeah.
I was like, where are the wins? What are they? And then they moved on. So I don't know what the wins are, but there were some quick wins. Now, granted, quick wins for a company of NBC scope may not be as accessible to every customer, but the point is, every single customer on stage had some kind of time to value that was reasonable, was within months. And I think that's really like a potent shift for SAP, and I think that bodes well for what they're trying to do. So,
well, John, good news for you. We added to the ASUG board a senior member of the finance team from NBCU. Also, we do have their representation, and we can do a follow-up to get you those essential
the quick wins, man. I need to know what they got for you.
But I also would say, in the spirit of quick wins, we need to, as a customer community, really move away from, and this is easier said than done for sure, move away from this idea of multi-year projects. We have got to get this down to much faster iterative advancements. I think SAP could do more to help us get there, but the days of the long, bloated, multi-year project to deliver value, I think they're over. I don't think, to your point, I don't think the C-suite has the patience for it. I don't think the line of business has patience for it. And I think one of the best ways for us to get there is to figure out ways to decustomize so we can actually adopt and drive innovation faster. We as a customer, and I said this earlier today, we as customers need to get out of the customization business. We need to do more by doing less, meaning we have got to whole scale push code responsibility back to SAP. Otherwise, we are going to be forever imprisoned in our own series of customizations that we can't get out of.
Welcome to Jeff's Fit to Standard stump speech. All right, well, I think we seeded the conversation pretty well, even though we didn't even mention business data cloud. I can't believe we're not buzzword compliant. And by the way, it's no longer Inside Apps, folks. It's Intelligent Apps. So please update your slide decks accordingly. And they explain the reason for that, by the way, which is insights too limited to BI use cases and intelligent apps. It's important to span everything. So that's the rationale. So shall we find out what the audience wants to ask us? Because we need to do this now. I think we've set the table really well.
But wait a minute, you got Josh and I here. No college athletics.
We're not
that's
doing
on the table.
No.
There's a whole Big Ten rivalry going here.
I hate saying we're coming.
Let's rock party in the Big Men. Yes.
We already have a question, guys.
Okay.
So following on to your discussion of partner certification, so as a customer, it often feels like partner certification is more of a license to sell than a measure of competence. And is that too harsh, or am I understanding?
Being generous. Look, in general, the partner ecosystem is complicated. First of all, I mean, there's easily five different categories of partners out there. I think one of the things that's going to happen in terms of not just in terms of certification is, in addition to certification, what's coming down the road, and it's coming shortly, and there's a time frame we can't really discuss. There's going to be some really, really excellent methods using the cloud, the tool chain, the cloud ALM functionality to start to put the guardrails, put some metrics around the partner engagement in such a way that you're able to not just manage the ongoing engagement, but use those metrics to actually independently rate partners as well. So there's going to be independent data about how successful partners are. Our colleague Bonnie does this already mostly in the HR space. It's possible, but this kind of notion of it's not just a license even to implement, it's going to come with some more data about your legitimacy to be the partner for the job. That's coming. That's not fast enough, but it's going to be there.
That's Bonnie Tinder of Raven Intel for the podcast listeners.
I think that there has been a massive movement of SAP to move away just from the licensing aspect, but how do customers really get value from the product? There's been a push to make sure that the partner ecosystem adapts and actually uses the Accelerate methodology. There was some controversy around that when that popped out, including some metrics for them that unlock certain partner dollars at certain stages if the partners can demonstrate that they're moving towards that. And there's a lot of partners who felt for a long period of time that their methodologies were better and they could get better distance from them. So they thought that they didn't need to implement those things. So SAP's pushed them to that. I think that there's an opportunity for them to be part of other ways to drive value. If we're really going to be living in a cloud-based public cloud world, it's really important that this gets done in a consistent way. And I think that's where some of this certification is going.
Can I just make a quick comment too, which is I think certification questions are important, but I think there's a fundamental shift and disruption coming in the services industry that's already well underway in the SaaS world, including SAP Public Cloud, where the expectation, and this came up in the keynote today, for consulting ratios for software is not 1-10 and 1-20 like it was in the good old days of ERP. It's much more like 1-3 or 1-2. And that puts a lot of pressure on how partners traditionally made money in the SAP ecosystem and in other ERP vendors as well. And the new business models that emerge have to do with building really cool IP for industries and building recurring revenue models. And the most encouraging part of it is it's based more on customer success than it is on lift and shift migrations of, oh, you want to customize that? Sure, no problem. We'll customize that for you, whether it's strategic to you or not or whatever. So I think those fundamental changes in how services firms serve SAP customers is going to be fascinating to watch. And if you listen to SAP, you'll hear clues that SAP is starting to push its partners on this. Now, how much SAP can succeed in pushing partners on this will be interesting to watch, because some of these partners are pretty sizable operations with their own agenda.
So I also think that it's important as we as customers also start to take certification seriously. And so one of the things that I've asked SAP to think about is, where do we as customers need to be certified? How does ASUG play a role in that? Because if we ask the partners to level up their game, I believe we as customers need to level up at the same time and be much more savvy as to what these solutions are, be much more in control of how those solutions are being delivered back to us. And I think that requires us to also be better educated.
Customers, you need to also step up and push this concept of quality much harder than you have in the past. And I think that's part of what Geoff was just saying. It used to be that the partner's the adult supervision in the room. I want the customer to be the adult supervision and to supervise the partner more and to vote with your dollars. You have the power to do that, and you should.
All right. Next question.
When you are focusing on mid-market, the public cloud versus private cloud, and the SAP push that it starts with public cloud only when it doesn't fit in, it goes to private cloud. So what's your view on that?
My view on that? Well, look, I mean, I spent a lot of time studying a lot of different SaaS solutions, and I'm just a huge advocate of public cloud software. Like, by definition, I think the economies of scale around multi-tenancy and the extensibility, they're just happier, better stories where you hear customers innovating a lot faster with less technical debt. And it does impose some discipline. But one of the cool things about modern SaaS is if you get your extensibility platform right, it's not like you always have to do standard for everything. So I am a big advocate of it, but I do acknowledge that the customers are on a journey there that's very individual. And that also includes the extent of industry functionality. And I think if you ask SAP, they'll tell you that the industry part of that conversation, they need to pick that up again and address that in a public cloud context. And I expect, as we roll into TechEd season, we'll start to hear more and more about that, because that's one of the obvious questions, right, for customers is like, they want to move to a robust public cloud solution that matches their industry requirements as well.
I believe from a public cloud perspective that, and what we've been advocating from an ASUG point of view to SAP, is there's a service called Max Attention, which is used for traditionally larger enterprises. I believe there needs to be a version of that service available for public cloud customers with a very important nuance to it, which is if you're in a public cloud implementation cycle and you find that there is functionality that you believe is necessary, SAP will take the necessary steps to deliver that functionality to you in a public cloud environment, and not send you down the path of a private cloud deployment, which then at some point in time in the future would be converted to a public cloud deployment, which means you have to ultimately take another step. So I think there needs to be better accountability and responsibility on SAP's part to deliver public cloud solutions that can actually fit customer needs. Now, I also will tell you that all the customers are very unique, so there's never going to be one size that fits all. So there has to be a willingness for the customer base to adopt it to standard, and not as soon as something gets difficult, opt out and say, I need this to be customized and it needs to be different because I'm different. Well, I mean, if you are really different, then that might require some level of customization coming through the BTP layer. But if not, adopt standard out-of-the-box software.
Josh, we got Holger Mueller in the house. Holger is infamous for asking brutal questions of panels. So, Holger, if you think of a question in the next few minutes, you may want to grab the mic and show us how it's done. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, let's hear that.
We are hearing some murmurs that ultimately everything ends up as public cloud. So if private cloud guys also may have to transition to public cloud. Is that coming, the fears to come true?
So look, just a couple quick things on that. I mean, SAP has been very upfront in terms of AI solutions, for example, that while you can do some AI through BTP, that the newest AI functionality at scale is going to be delivered through the SaaS products and through the public cloud. So there is this sort of like obvious prioritization towards that. SAP clearly, through the clean core advocacy it's doing, ultimately wants to see customers on the equivalent of a standard, which Geoff has been calling for. I think SAP cares more about standard than public versus private, if that makes sense, because it's really about ease of management and deployment, because they're going to be managing that either way. But it's sort of the equivalent, right? Because if it's private, but it's just about a standard system, then it's pretty similar to a public. But ideally, yes. I mean, that is, I think, the future they're pushing for.
And I'll add that, they have the industry-specific functionality that they're building out is built in BTP. So it stands outside of either version of S/4HANA and therefore is technically available to either version of S/4HANA. That's done very deliberately. And in fact, in theory, because if you start on the private cloud running industry-specific functionality, you end up on public cloud, you don't have to do that painful migration there. But I think I think we all agree here.
Well, and look, I mean, SAP more than almost any other software vendor has companies with deep footprints, either in heavily regulated industries where you think about aerospace and defense, for example, or you think about utilities, or you think about complex manufacturing environments that are in many ways not ready to put those mission critical manufacturing systems still at this point into public cloud environments. So that is starting to change. So for that reason, SAP has to accommodate that, but you are going to hear SAP pressing customers on this move to standard, and they're going to tell you, like, look, you're going to have a hard time absorbing some of our latest functionality, especially our AI, if you're in a customized environment.
I walked by, hear a familiar voice, and have to ask a question. So Holger Mueller, Constellation Research. Question for Geoff, because I see ASUG here, right? Like, in the long dance with the software vendors, which you do as a user group, right? Like, what would you say were the 3 biggest achievements of the last recent years where ASUG has influenced SAP for the better?
See, Holger doesn't mess around.
Wow, I'm the one who gets the hard. I'm the one who gets the hard question.
Doesn't mess around.
I think indirect licensing certainly counts as one of the huge places we've influenced. The second place that we've been doing a tremendous amount of influence is around the early design days of RISE itself, and how customers would be adopting RISE and how they would interpret that. The third area is we were also, from an ASUG perspective, heavily engaged and involved in the launch of BDC earlier this year and the later parts of last year, providing advice and counsel to SAP about how this would be received by customers, how they would think about it, how they would potentially adopt it. So I think that SAP and ASUG have probably worked together more closely and provided a very necessary viewpoint of what the customer thinks and how the customer thinks. I'm not going to tell you we're always successful at it, but we try and we try again. And I think we're one of many voices. Holger, Constellation is a voice that gets inputted into that as well. Certainly Jon and Josh, you're also inputted into it. So I think we are largely trying to influence SAP about how these solutions really affect and improve the lives of customers. Certainly, we are advocating, knowing full well that the customer base has a long distance to go, that this adoption of public cloud and SaaS over time will ultimately put us in a much better place than continuing to drive and persevere on customized solutions that we are forced to maintain for our entire IT lives.
Let me can I just add on to that real quick? Yeah, and I want to do a Holger. Give the mic back to Geoff for just one sec. I want to do my Holger Mueller impression. What's the next issue that you need to influence SAP on now?
Know me too well.
Yeah.
What is the next issue that we need to influence SAP on?
And if you don't know one, I'm going to give you one. So I think you have.
Well, I think one of the issues will be the continued adoption of BDC, because I think that is a very important product for them. We will continue to work with them very closely on how they advocate for public cloud adoption. And
can I give you one?
Yeah, I think I didn't hit either of the ones you were thinking about. I'm starting to sweat.
The other one I think you've been pushing that I think is important is apply all of that AI expertise to make our migration.
I totally missed the AI one. Yeah, that we need the AI tools. I really missed that one. This is called thinking under pressure. That the AI tools absolutely positively need to help us get to this next stage of software and using this software better. And I think that the tools need to be doing that much better.
I want to add put another star in the corner with Tech Connect. I think SAP kind of kicked the ball into their own goal, getting rid of Tech Ed, and you guys came back last year and the year before and created a really killer conference that's been influential in North America and continues to be. And I think that was you did them a favor, my outside opinion. And we're getting nods in the audience.
We got 5 minutes, so we got a lot to cover. Just real quick, too, I want to say one more thing on that topic, which is I love it when I see the collaborations between the user groups, because in some of these major issues like indirect licensing, it was the collaboration of voices that really made a difference. And I love the combined research, for example, that you and DSAG and UK ASUG did on AI adoption. I thought that was really important. And the podcast you did on that was so good that I wrote a whole article about it, and I never do that. So,
well, thank you. We are actually, many other global user groups are here in Orlando with us this week, and so we are sitting down with the DSAG, the German-speaking user group. We talk to each other all the time anyway. We've spent a lot of dinners together already this week, but we're going to sit down and talk about enterprise architecture and start to align on how we do a better job globally on that practice.
All right. Well, we're out of time. I wish we could have taken even more questions, but I got the hand signals, so we're kind of screwed. We only have like a few minutes left. So what would you say, like kind of stepping back from the event, imagining someone listening to this podcast who didn't have the good fortune to be amongst us today with all this good social action, what should they be thinking about if they're a customer and they missed this event?
I think that one of the things that is on my mind is we live in highly uncertain times, and the uncertainty level is back. We figured that out during COVID, but it's back. And when we live in uncertain times, it cannot be our software architectures that are holding us back. We need to be thinking about how we modernize and how we move faster, because I think our ability to move and shift and shake as the environment around us moves and shifts and shakes is going to be incredibly important. Because if it takes us 6 months to a year to put change into a system and get it through that system, that's way too long.
And I would say that if you didn't make it here this year to Sapphire, you've got local chapters meetings to go to. You have ways to interact with your peer. And we just did a little session on business case development. Peer interaction was the number one issue that people are looking for help with to get to understand this one topic of business case. And I will argue that there's probably 15 other important topics that community involvement is definitely germane. So I would say, listen to this podcast. You can catch some of the replays and then go find a way to interact with your peers.
And Josh, well said. There's 39 chapters across North America. If you can't grab an airline ticket and a hotel room night to go someplace, I guarantee you that one of those chapters is meeting within a reasonable drive.
And I just want to say that I talked with a customer yesterday that's going through a hard time on their project, and it does happen. And I was really struck by this customer felt very isolated to me, even though they were at this event. They weren't connected with other customers. I strongly recommended that they need to connect.
You did a therapy session with them.
They need to connect with ASUG much better. But also, I think we're just in a time where people need to get out more. Like the AI topic, for example, you shouldn't just be listening to SAP on AI. You should be listening to your peers. You should be studying this stuff and really trying to break through some of the hype. And so I think the more we can kind of come together and have these kind of conversations, the better we are. So I really want to thank ASUG for providing such an open platform to let us do our thing and let me do my thing. And thanks a lot for everyone who was here. It was fun. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Geoff. Thank you, John. That was fun.
All right.